brief remarks before we get started. First, let me thank the Green family, who I've had the pleasure of getting to know this evening. The Shaar Shalom congregation and Dr. Melanie Frappier for making tonight's event happen. Candace McDonald in our advancement office and the King Student Union also played a big role in putting together the day's events. Welcome to all of you here and those of you joining us online. The Dr. Saul Green Memorial Lecture was established for students at King's through the generosity of the Green family. And we are so excited to welcome this year's guest speaker, Dr. Wendy Stewart, who will be presenting her lecture, The Soundtrack of Our Lives, Music, the Brain, and Wellness. But before we begin, please I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. On behalf of all of us, I acknowledge that King's is located in Mi'kma'ki on the unceded and ancestral land of the Mi'kmaq, who continue to be the protectors of this land. I acknowledge the treaties by which the Mi'kmaq and the British Crown promised each other to live together in peace and friendship. King's is committed to being a community of peace and friendship, in other words, a treaty community. We also acknowledge that African Nova Scotians are a distinct people who have been contributing to Nova Scotia and Mi'kma'ki for more than 400 years. So now it is my pleasure to invite President Bill Leahy to offer some opening remarks.
Thank you, Tim. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It's wonderful to be with you all here for the this year's Dr. Saul Green Memorial Lecture. I have a few remarks, but I will keep them short because I know we'd all rather spend more time listening to our guest. Dr. Saul Green was a beloved family doctor, general surgeon, and founding member of the Shaar Shalom Synagogue, who cared deeply about the relationship between Judaism, medicine, and humanitarianism. His legacy of compassion and his deep sense of faith inspired the theme for this series, as did his love of connection and community. Our connection to Dr. Saul Green's family and community runs deep. Dr. Roselle Green, who was married to Dr. Saul, as I understand he was best known, is a King's alum and recipient in 2014 of the college's Order of the Ancient Commoner. Cool, eh? For her long-standing support of the King's community. In 2015, she was awarded an honorary degree of civil law at King's for her lifelong contributions to learning, communications, and community. Since then, Dr. Roselle Green has spent another decade, well into her 90s, living the life of the mind and encouraging others to do the same, including by regularly registering for university courses on all kinds of topics in many different disciplines. I know this because we have often, until recently, bumped into each other on our respective daily walks around campus. And in the times that we have, Roselle would always tell me about the essay she was working on for whatever course she was taking at that time. And I hear that she's once again taking violin lessons at the age of 97. So we miss Roselle being here with us tonight. I believe this may be the first Saul Green lecture that she hasn't been able to attend. It is through the Greens that King's has established a cherished relationship with the Shaar Shalom Synagogue. And Catherine and I have been honored to be part of this community-to-community relationship that King's has enjoyed with the synagogue and with the Greens for the past 10 years. Each year, the Greens have a family meal in the President's Lodge here at King's, and it's a delight to be with them for that family meal. Earlier this week, King's hosted another kind of event in our gym where we hope to raise a new building we have designed with partners from the Mi'kmaq and African Nova Scotian communities. That collaboration is a manifestation of the desire of King's to be a community that puts its promises to welcoming all into meaningful action. It is also a manifestation of our abiding commitment to journalism, which Roselle Green studied at King's, I believe, in the 1960s, before we had a School of Journalism. Now the School of Journalism, Writing, and Publishing. At that earlier event this week, I spoke about how we live in times with too many of us looking into our phones and our echo chambers, and too often away from one another. I spoke of how strong opinions are drowning out hard facts, polarization is overwhelming empathy and analysis, and individualism and selfishness are elbowing out caring and our shared humanity. The Saul Green Lectures, the partnership between King's and Shaar Shalom that makes them possible, and the example of both Dr. Green provide the kind of inspiration we need to push back against what divides us and to embrace our shared desire and the opportunities we have to make the world a better place through friendship, neighborly relations, and spending time learning together. And perhaps a little else has quite the same potential to bring us together, whether it is to celebrate good times or help us through troubled times, than music. I'm so eager to hear what our guest lecturer, Wendy Stewart, has to share with words and with music about the power of music to connect us and help us learn and grow. So with that, I'll invite Dr. Melanie Frappier to tell us a little bit more about Dr. Stewart and her incredible work as the background for this evening's lecture. Dr. Frappier.
Well, it's clear at this time that no one wants to hear from me, so I'll be really brief and absolutely give no details, which is a terrible example to give my students. Don't do this. But it is such a privilege for me to welcome Dr. Stewart as the speaker for this year's Saul Green Memorial Lecture. And what a fantastic person embodying the values of this event. I think that most of you actually came because you know Dr. Stewart. Some of you came because you know her as an internationally renowned paediatric neurologist who's been a trailblazing educator and who has played numerous key roles in at Dalhousie Medicine in New Brunswick, and has basically injected her passion and her innovation for teaching into what has become a fantastic medical humanities program. And others here are here because you know her as an exceptional musician and you wanted to hear a good tune, and you already had a bit of this. And you know her as a humanitarian. She is an accordionist who was classically trained in Scotland, but she has been using her musical talents not only to heal people and to bring them together, but also to fundraise for nonprofit organizations for over 2 decades. But describing Dr. Stewart this way it is not presenting who she is really, because it seems that these are 2 different facets of her life, whereas for her, music is not a side passion. It is a lens through which she understands everything from medicine to humanity to wellness. And so for years, she has championed through her research and her teaching arts and medical humanities as essential to healing and to our human connections. As her internationally renowned research show, art and music, they're not just ways of reducing the stress of physicians. They're not just there to help patients through difficult times. They are there because they are ways of transforming care. They can be integrated into medical training to help students become health professionals who will continually cultivate critical thinking, empathy, openness, and an appreciation of other perspectives. Used as a core component in healthcare, arts can help us fight over medicalizations and help us address challenging neurological conditions and alleviate the suffering caused by debilitating mental health issues, while at the same time enriching the experience, a lived experience of patients, of their families, and of their healthcare providers. But wellness goes beyond the clinic. And so tonight, in her presentations, The Soundtrack of Our Lives, Music, the Brain, and Wellness, Dr. Stewart invites us on a journey. It's going to be a journey of discovery of how music, from the lullabies your parents sang to you, to the songs you now hear with a bit of nostalgia, that all of this music in your life, right, shape your learning, your social connection, your well-being. And so, after what will be a fantastic lecture, I promise you, this is going to be fun. We'd love you to apply what you've learned and come and join us to the wardroom, which is just down the hall there on your left, for a bit of a party. We have musicians. You can have a drink on us, and you can continue the discussion with Dr. Stewart there. So follow the crowd after the break. But first, let's start a great evening by welcoming Dr. Stewart.
Do I need to do anything? You'll switch. You'll switch. Thank you so much, Melanie. I'm not used to getting so many compliments in a row, so I really very much appreciate that. It's really lovely to be here. I'm so honored to have been asked to present this lecture. And I have to say, if anyone that knows me, I could talk about this for hours. And so I have to be mindful of that and make sure that I just cover it in the time that we have together. But I hope by the end of it that you'll be excited about what music can do and how it can impact our lives and connect us, as has been said. So one thing, I'm sorry Dr. Green can't be here, so I just want to say to you, if you're listening, I hope this is enjoyable for you as well. I just want to say that I'm joining you. I know we've had an acknowledgement of territories, but I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Wabanaki peoples. And it's predominantly the lands of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqey, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot. And I'm just really honored to be learning more about my community. And when I think about my teaching that I do, I really want to integrate some of that. And I hope you'll capture some of that in what I'm going to share tonight. Now, I've no particular conflict of interest, but I would say I'm definitely biased. I've been playing the accordion since I was 9, and I wanted to play since I was 4. So, to be honest, I really believe I came out of the womb wanting to play accordion. And I started bugging my parents when I was probably about 3, and I used to get a cushion and say, I want to play this. And I used to walk around the room, and they thought, what is she on about? You know, and then finally we got our first TV when I was 4. And one night, these two men came on playing accordion, and I was so excited. I went and got my mom, and I said, this is what I want to play. Of course, they didn't believe me. And so they just ignored me for about 5 years. And then finally, my granny said, and of course you'll identify with this if you have any Scottish descent, give the bairn a chance. And so they got me my first accordion, got me linked, and I put on that accordion, and it was like finding an old slipper. So if I can impart that to families and parents, if your children want to play an instrument, don't dissuade them, because it's very powerful. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the brain. I'm a pediatric neurologist, and I always get excited talking about the brain, and of course how music integrates with that is really exciting, and so I want to share that with you. And then take you on a journey, as Melanie said, talking about how music impacts us at different parts of our lives. Then I hope that you'll reflect on what you might do with music as you go forward. Now I want to take you on a little journey through different societies, because if you look back in history, these flutes that you see here, they're actually made out of crane bone. And they have the same tonal structure that we have music today, but they're probably thousands of years old. Nobody knows exactly how old. One place I read, it was at least 9,000. Other places say about 5, but regardless, they're very old. And then if you look at some of the oldest societies that are in our world, particularly the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, they have music as an intrinsic part of their culture. And also our Indigenous peoples here in North America, music is very important, and as part of their powwows, music is a hugely important piece of that, and the rhythms. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that means. And so the last piece is, I put there a bowl, because if anyone's had any involvement with Tibetan singing bowls, they are part of healing processes as well. Now in our Western society, we're surrounded by music, whether we notice it or not. So you get in the car, you have the radio on, you go to the supermarket, they're playing that awful elevator music sometimes. But you go even in an elevator sometimes and you'll hear music. And if you really pay attention, it surrounds us everywhere we go. It's also in TV shows, in movies, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through that. And when I think about music, it's not just what we hear. So we listen to music with our ears, but we actually feel it in other ways as well. And I hope to impart that to you as I tell you about what happens in your brain. People worship with their arms up. They'll go to rock concerts and they'll have their arms in the air because you feel it through your whole body. Even little kids will love to be on their parents, feel those rhythms, move with them. And even before they can talk, they will bob to music and have rhythm. And if you're around little kids, they love music, and you'll see more about that too. Now, I think about music in different ways. Everyone laughs at me because I can hear a rhythm in anything, even a washing machine. You know how it has that, movement? And so I can hear it no matter what. And I think of our bodies, and we have rhythms in everything our body does. So our heartbeat, our breath, and then, of course, we can sing in our voice. But one thing music, and I'm sure you're all here probably for a reason, but one thing I would say to you is music can make us feel anything. So all of the emotions we can imagine can be touched or brought out by music. So it includes things like sadness, peacefulness, torment sometimes, happiness, fear, dislike, you name it. A musical piece could bring it out for each of us in different ways. And some people, if you listen to one piece, it might make them feel one way, but another person feels differently with that same piece. And it's just how we have connected with that music in different parts of our lives. So as I said, I couldn't talk to you about this without telling you a little bit about the brain. So bear with me. So I even made it color-coded though, so it made it more fun. So the red part is the frontal lobe of the brain, and it's responsible for our motor movements and also our eye movements. It's where we make decisions and judgments, and it also has part of our speech as well, so the expressive language. And then if you come into the blue part, that's where we process our sensory experiences, so what we feel. And then the mustardy colored part is called the temporal lobe, and that's where we experience emotion, memory, and at the back part, also our receptive language. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. But the green part is where we process visual information. And the reason I'm telling you all this is you'll understand the power of music by the end and how many parts of the brain are involved when we play music. Now, if I take a slice through that brain, so basically cut it down through, this is what it would look like. And you might think, well, there's space there in the middle. But what that actually is the outer part is called the cortex. And that's where most of our brain cells are, and that's our thinking part of our brain. And then underneath that, that white part is actually all the connections between all the different parts of the brain, what we call the brain networks. And then deep in the brain are other gray-looking parts that are involved in our movements. And so all those parts connect with one another while I'm standing here waving my arms, thinking, talking, remembering what I want to say next. All of those things are all interconnected. And if I could hone in on one of the cells in the cortex, it looks something like this. So this is the cell body here on the left, and it has all these little dendrites that come out. And then there's a main protrusion that comes out from each brain cell called an axon. And it's covered with insulation called myelin, and that's why it looks white. And so when we talk about the white matter of the brain, it's because all of the fibers are myelinated, and it allows us to send signals extremely fast. So because what happens is between these little nodes, the impulses can travel really, really rapidly. And then brain cells, if you look at all those little pieces at the end, they have to talk to one another. And the way they talk to one another is through little gaps called synapses. And what happens is one cell releases chemicals called neurotransmitters to tell the next cell what to do. And if it reaches a certain threshold, it'll fire. And of course, it's not a single cell, it's clumps of cells and networks. But it's very clever how it all works. I always say to people, I mean, much as we know so much about the brain, it's pretty cool, and there's probably still much more we can learn. But what the brain ends up doing is making all those interconnections together. And what I really love thinking about is what happens when a baby's born. Well, they have to be prepared for everything. And so when they're born, they start to sprout connections with as many different cells as they possibly can. And so you'll see what happens. The density of cells increases very quickly. And if you think of the kids that you know in your life, their head grows very fast. And this is because their brain is growing. And it grows very rapidly. And so then what has to happen is, how do we organize that brain? So how do we learn to speak? How do we learn to move and run and do all the things that we do as humans? So what has to happen is the brain has to organize itself. So we do what's called pruning. So there is some truth to the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. and that does still happen to us as we grow a little bit more as well. But if you take a look at an older child, you see that by the time you're 14, it's not quite as dense as it was when it was 6, because you don't need as many cells. If you've learned to speak a certain language, you've learned to do whatever it is. And so underneath that cortex, they can now show all those connections and the organization of all these pathways. And so I just want you to remember that as we go through and talk about music. Now, there's some other things about the brain that I think are very cool, so I want to share that with you as well. So when we listen to things, our ears actually kind of hone the sound and bring it into the middle ear, and you've got a little membrane there called the tympanic membrane. Then 3 little bones that vibrate and send the signal into that curly part, and it has hair cells that all vibrate at different frequencies. And so it's very amazing because it organizes it according to frequency. And then it travels from the nerve to what's called the auditory cortex. And that's also organized by frequency as well. So the brain has a lot of what we call somatotopic organization. And it's very clever how it does all of that. Have any of you ever experienced goosebumps with music? I'm getting a lot of nods. Well, the part that what's happening there is your reward system is getting activated, and it makes you feel good, right? So when we get our brains activated with our reward system, you get dopamine released, and that's the feel-good hormone. My sadness is that we also get it from likes on things like Facebook, but that's why people who write these programs and algorithms, they know that. They know that we like that, and it makes you feel good, and you want to keep doing it. So we respond to that. And so the things that activate our reward system are video games, I have to say, food, particularly chocolate, and then music as well. But there's 2 particular areas of the brain. They're called the nucleus accumbens. You have to remember the name. I won't test you later, but just to help you understand, there's also another piece called the ventral tegmental gray matter. And these pieces, when they get activated, release dopamine, and they make us feel good. So we get motivated and have pleasure when we have that happen. So it makes us want to do things more. And then the other side of this is our stress response. And I wanted to tell you about that as well, because music can play a key role in that. So what happens when we feel stressed is it's our fight or flight response. So it's really to protect us. So before we evolved to where we are now, if you had to escape from a saber-toothed tiger, you don't want to sit there and think, well, should I stay or go? You need to just respond. And so what happens is your fight or flight response kicks in before you even think about it. And your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you get a shift of where the blood flow is going to allow you to run away. And you get to have this all happen, you get the release of a hormone called cortisol. Now, if you're always stressed, that actually isn't good for you, because cortisol also increases your sugars. But you need the sugar for fuel to be able to run away. So when you're stressed all the time, it isn't healthy for you, and it certainly can put you at risk for things like diabetes. But that cortisol response can also be impacted by music, and we're going to speak about all of that as well. So let's talk about music. Music is this amazing, complex, and very subjective experience, because we all feel things differently, and depending on the music that's being played. And you might like different styles of music, different instruments. So when we actually talk about music, what are we really referring to? Well, it's sound waves that come into our ears. They have different frequencies and vibrations. They have tones and frequencies that are at different intervals. So if you listen to different instruments, they have different tones and frequencies, and the overtones sound different. So for example, my accordion sounds different from a violin, although I do have little couplers on my accordion that allow me to sort of sound like other instruments, but not really, because it's a different structure. And so when we actually play music or listen to music, it activates more of the brain than probably any other activity you could do. And we now have techniques available to us called functional MRI that allow us to actually show which parts of the brain are being lit up when we play or listen to music. And I'm going to hopefully convince you by the end that all these little bright areas that you can see on this image can be even more if you're playing particularly the accordion. And I did say I was biased. So I'll have you all wanting to play the accordion. Now, the thing that's really cool is that our brain even responds to different chords. So if I played a minor chord versus a major chord, you actually get a different response. And coming from Scotland, a lot of the music is laments, and they're kind of miserable, a lot of them, and especially the words. But they're beautiful songs, and they have lots of minor sevenths in them, and I love them. I love playing them, but they certainly make you feel different. And if you play happy songs, and certainly in our culture here in Western society, they're usually major chords and major keys. And so they make you kind of feel upbeat. And I'm going to let you experience some of that. But when we listen to music, we have something happen. So when I'm playing later, you'll realize this. You have a desire to move and to maybe tap your foot or clap your hand or do something. And you have a response in what's called your autonomic nervous system, which is the automatic part of the brain that controls our heart rate, blood pressure, the cortisol, things like that. And so it activates that system, and it can reduce our cortisol. It can also impact pain. So for people who are struggling with pain, music can actually help them feel better. The other thing it can be helpful for is a motor response. So because you can really respond to the movement side of it, you can actually have a motor response, which I'm going to illustrate for you and get you all to be part of it. And then, as I mentioned, it activates our reward system, so you feel good. So this stress response is a really important one because it can really make people feel much better. So it lowers the cortisol, and it can actually synchronize your heart rate and breathing as well. So even at the end of life, for example, people can have music. It's called thanatology, and people will play music for someone and synchronize to the person's heart rate and their breathing, and it just slows things down. Now, for some people, if you play slow music, that's calming for them. But for others, the fast stuff is fun and calming. And so you can't generalize and say one's good and one's not. But most people find faster music quite energizing, and they want to do things. So I wanted to get you to engage with me. Anyone that knows me, I'm not somebody that just likes to do a didactic lecture. And a lot of my colleagues are here, which I really appreciate. And so they know that I love to get people involved in active learning. So I want to just give you a little experience of some music. And I want you to tell me what immediately either pops in your head as a visual or the feeling that it gives you. And so you can put your hand up, shout out, but let's see what we can get. Hopefully this will work. What does that make people think about? Yes. Okay, so just for everyone online to make sure, so the idea of a little happy piece. So walking into a toy store, the kid's happy because they're going to get something. What about someone else? Yes?
Walking through a meadow with lots of sunshine and flowers.
So walking through a meadow with sunshine and flowers. So you can see that the tones, the frequencies, the instruments will generate different feelings. Yes? A ballet. So what was it that made you think of ballet? Right, so the musical pieces can make you visualize or feel a certain movement depending on how the tones are put together and the notes and even how they're structured. And people who compose know all of this, and they make the most of music and help us enjoy it and can create a sense of anticipation. Now, what about this one? Okay, so everyone's saying Phantom of the Opera, and then, I mean, it was immediate. You all went, I know what that is. And so one of the things I want you to realize is music is an incredibly powerful memory cue. And we'll have another little fun thing to do about that. But it really does link things for us. Because so much of the brain is involved when we listen and engage with music, the more cues you have, the more you can remember. And it's easier to recall that memory as well. So last one in this part. What's this one? This one. So what does this make you feel? I missed what you said there. Hang on. I made this clip too long. So what did somebody say? Oktoberfest. So what is it about that made you think that? Okay, so it had that style of music and it's that yee-haw, kind of thing. Absolutely. Anybody else? That's good. All right. Now, the other thing that music can do, and you probably don't even realize this, is helps you really gain more from a movie. And I might not play these all, but they all start playing when you click. So this is one of my favorite movies. I don't know if it'll play, but we'll see. I'm just going to play a little part of it to let you hear. But it can really create a sense of anticipation. And you hear that sound, and then often when the music's playing, it'll resolve into the next scene. And you probably don't even notice, but it helps you remember.
Now, this species of Veriformin's been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean, this thing is about this thing. What?
So there was this sense of anticipation, almost like, ooh, what's going to happen? And then it resolves into this beautiful few strains when the dinosaurs come out. Now, for those of us that have been around a bit longer, maybe not quite as long as this, but silent movies all relied on music to create the scene, the sense of anticipation, the excitement, the movement, everything. I'm just going to play a little bit because I think Charlie Chaplin is amazing. And then it's like, uh-oh. And now he's stuck. And I could show you this whole clip, it's very funny. But you can see how the music really can set the scene, and you don't need words. I mean, the music speaks louder than words, and it truly is a universal language, because even if you don't understand the language that someone's singing, you can feel the emotion in it. I feel very blessed. I was at the first ever Global Congress for Music for Social Change in October. It was in Toronto. And I had the privilege of presenting there, and I met people from all over the world. And I think I heard music sung in 9 different languages. And it was phenomenal because you really identified with it. You got to hear the cultural sounds from their countries. And there was people who had disabilities that were engaged with music, and what a power that has been for them to really help them really have autonomy and be able to do things. Now, as I've already mentioned, this is a quiz now. You have to guess which movie this is from. I'm going to play little clips. So just shout out if you know what it is. You ready? You got it. Okay, what about this one? So, no, it's not 2001. Anybody? So I'm trying to trick you because this is also Jurassic Park. Now just listen to how John Williams, just that creepy part at the beginning, and now it resolves, and it's just like this beautiful piece. And that's how the scene unfolds. There's this sense of anticipation. What about this one? That didn't take much for that one, did it? Okay, what about this one's more obvious too? Star Wars, all right. Last one then, what's this one? Indiana, somebody got it, absolutely. So you can see, even in just a few bars, you all knew what this was. And even if you've only seen the movie once, you just identify with it because it stays with you, even if you hadn't actually focused on it when it was playing. I've watched Jurassic Park lots of times, so I guess I'm a little biased, but anyway, that's okay. So now you've got a sense of the power of music. So let's take our journey through our lives and think about what music does at each age. Now, Melanie mentioned that, and I think what's really incredible to me is babies in the womb, if they do research and play music and play certain flows of the music, like it might have a decrescendo or something, if they play that same music when the baby's born, you actually get the same response to the baby's heart rate, which is pretty amazing. And the other thing is that babies love music. And if you look culturally all around the world, the tones and melodies that we sing to babies are all very similar, even though they're not in the same language. And so that tonality, like hush-a-bye baby on the treetop, that whole up and down like that is just very similar across cultures. And babies love it. They love us to sit and croon and sing to them, and they just really respond. And I have a lovely story from when I used to be a resident here at the IWK. I used to go and play my accordion around the wards, and I mean, it's a pretty loud instrument, as you've gathered. And I went to the neonatal intensive care, and they thought, well, that's kind of loud. But they'd say, oh, yeah, sure, you can come in and play some music. And there was a little boy there who had to have major surgery on his abdomen because of his diagnosis. And he was a very, very irritable baby. And remarkably, when I played my accordion, he actually did go to sleep. And his mum and dad, I got to know them quite well, and they said to me, when we go home, do you think we could call you and you'd play for him? Because, so we had a laugh about this, but they said, we don't know how we're going to calm him down because he was just so irritable. So that was a lovely experience for me because people don't think of accordion as calming. It's not quite as bad as bagpipes, but, so. Now, the thing that's really amazing is as children grow and they're, get 6 months to 2 years, they're really learning what it means to engage with others. And there's been some fascinating research that's been done, and I just had the privilege of seeing Laurel Trainer because she was presenting at that conference I was at. But she's done a lot of work over the last, oh gosh, it's at least 20 years now, probably even more, looking at what happens when you use music to engage with young children. So if you were holding a little child and you were bouncing to music, and I bounced in synchrony with you, those kids are more likely to engage with me socially than if I bounced out of sync with them. So there's something that happens, and the difference is if it's in sync, they will engage socially 60% of the time, and then if it's asynchronous and I'm not with them, it's only 25. So there's something happens that if you engage, and then if you say to the kids, and Laurel actually showed this video, so I've seen it a few times, but you drop something and you go, oh, I can't reach it, can you help me? And the kids will look at you, and then they clue into this and they'll come and help you and pick it up for you. And so it's very powerful to see how they'll respond to that. The other thing that happens with music, particularly the work that was done with the Suzuki Early Music Program, is children who engage in music together adapt better to stress. They're just happier generally, they smile more, and they're also more easily soothed. And so music is incredibly powerful just to bring children together and to support them. And if you think of the slightly older kids, and even if we can all remember that, it's a long time ago for me certainly, but a lot of the things we do with children naturally include music. Like the games we play, dancing around, holding hands, doing things to music, skipping ropes and doing things to music with that as well. So I want to do a little exercise with you now. So I'm going to get my accordion out and I'm going to get you to do something with me. So what I want you to do is I'm going to play a tune and I want you to try to clap out of time with me. Or if you feel like getting up, you could even walk around, that's fine. But I want you to try and be out of time with me, okay? All right, so you ready? I want to see you all trying not to clap in time. You ready? Now, just 1 second, I've lost my mic. Not sure where it went. All right. Now, how easy was that? I always say to people when I do this exercise, when I'm looking out of you, you look pained. It's really amazing because your body wants to entrain to the beat. And so it's actually really hard not to. So this time, I want you to clap with me, and I want you to see what the difference is, okay? You were just all right in it, smiling, and it's so much easier, isn't it? All right. Now, this is kind of fun because although humans can keep the beat, we're not the only ones, although we're the only ones that can anticipate the beat. So we're much better at it. But this is Snowball, and he really likes Gangnam Style.
Oppa Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
So I heard about Snowball many years ago when I attended a conference on music and the brain, and it was amazing because they'd found this bird on YouTube, and they thought, oh, well, they've just taught him to do this. But they played all different music for him, and he had like 27 different dance moves that he liked to do. So let's keep moving and thinking about, as the kids get older, what does that do to their brains? Well, if you learn to play an instrument, it actually can enhance kids' reading and verbal skills. It improves their scores in mathematics, and it also helps them in playing with others you'll think about their critical thinking and problem solving. And I'm a real believer that not only does it do all of that, but the other things it helps with are things like discipline. A lot of the kids I meet now, they kind of give up very quickly. But to be able to hang in and do something and see yourself making progress, music can be a powerful tool to help the kids with that, and to have the patience that you're not going to get it right away. So much of our society, and I mean, it was mentioned, it's like instant. You know, I can't do it, oh, well, I'm not going to bother. And yet we can get the kids to really engage and see that they can go somewhere with it. And that motivation is very powerful, especially if they really enjoy it. And then they feel good. The other thing it does, it can help with attention. And I'm involved with a study with an organization called Sistema New Brunswick. Who's heard of Sistema before? So a few hands. So El Sistema in Venezuela was an organization that started orchestral music training for children on the streets. They come from marginalized communities, and they really gave them a gift of learning to play an orchestral instrument. And this has become a phenomenon all over the world. And I'm very proud to say that New Brunswick is one of the leaders in this, and we have 9 different sites for Sistema for children. And the kids come from disadvantaged backgrounds. They would never have the chance to learn an orchestral music instrument. We have a lot of newcomers that have immigrated to Canada, and they get to be involved in that. And even though English isn't their first language, they love the music and get to engage with it. And how powerful is that to see all these kids together? So I'm a real supporter of Sistema. The other thing that music can do when we get to the teen years is that piece about bonding and things like that is so important, because peer support and also pressure is so important in our teen years. And if you play and sing music together, it actually releases another hormone called oxytocin. So that's your bonding, cuddly kind of hormone. So that's the hormone that you get when you try to cuddle a baby or hold a baby. You get a release of that. It just makes you feel good and you want to hold them. But that sense of being together can foster synchrony and a sense of belonging and unity. And I really think this is very important for our youth, because what I'm seeing in my practice is a lot of kids that are really struggling with anxiety. They're lonely and they're often quite isolated, even though they're on their phones and everything. They still feel quite alone. And there's also a lot of concern around bullying as well. Now, I'm not saying it's the whole thing, but certainly the concerns around excessive screen time and then not being able to deal with conflict or be able to cope with someone, to be able to read body language, facial expressions, can be a challenge. And my concern is that even though they might get together, even when they're together, they're actually on their screens talking to one another. And I see that even in my practice. I go out to the waiting room now and there's just silence because everyone's sitting on their phone in different parts of the room. That wasn't like that before. When I first got in practice, the parents would be on the floor with the kids playing and having fun, but it really has shifted. The other thing about this time in our life is we're very much driven by these reward systems that I've told you about. So dopamine is critical. So that's why kids will take chances. They take risks because they get this little burst of dopamine and you get that feel good if your peers support you and things like that. So they'll do things they probably shouldn't. I don't know if you've ever seen the research that was done on driving in youth, because people think youth are bad drivers. But if they're not with their peers, they're actually just as good as anyone else. But when you put them with their peers, they want to show off. And they want to get that, woohoo, yeah, let's do it. And so that's the challenge. So when I think about this time in our lives, music is a wonderful way for youth to explore their own identity, maybe through different genres of music or lyrics. The lyrics themselves can be a way for kids to have an outlet for their emotions. Maybe they don't have the words for it, but the song can actually speak to that. And it can also help you cope. There's a wonderful website that was built by the Glenn Gould Foundation, and really it's on music for mental health in youth. So if you ever get the chance, take a look at it. It's called Instrumental, and they put together data, information, also interviews with well-known people across Canada to really help the kids understand the power of music and how it can help reduce anxiety and also improve depression. So you could have things like playlists to help youth feel a sense of belonging. I also was involved myself with one of the medical students looking at songwriting and how kids can use that just to let things out and express their feelings. So they were able to express things like grief through lyrics, work through challenging experiences, and just really share something that they would probably never have been able to do if they hadn't had another medium. Because often with the arts, what it allows us to do, and I was just talking with someone, with Joanna, before we came in for the talk tonight, that what art allows us to do is to have almost like a third space to express ourselves, and it's less threatening, and so you can use music in that way as well. Now, the other thing that music does if you've made it yourself, and I saw this when we had the kids write the songs, they got to perform the piece that they created. They were so chuffed with themselves because everyone was like, wow, this is great, you know, and we all shared it with one another. And they were all very different, but they loved it. They loved being able to share that with one another. Now, as we keep getting a bit older, you know, music can be all sorts of things to us. So as was mentioned, music fills special events. So weddings, funerals, births, birthdays, anything that we celebrate is pretty unusual not to have music as part of it. And then it also is used for social interaction, going to see a show together, going to see a rock concert, being at a rugby game and you're all singing the national anthem. That would be more in Scotland. But if you've ever been in a rugby game and saw the crowd singing Flower of Scotland, you'd understand what I'm talking about. But for me, personally, I can truly share that my music is probably what helped me stay in medicine. So when I was in my second year of residency, I had the worst call karma, I have to say. I rarely got to sleep, and I would always be exhausted. And I was in a band at that time with my good friend Nelson Ferguson, and I'd finished, so I'd been at work from 8 o'clock one morning, stayed the next day. I was up all night, stayed the whole day, and would finish at 6 o'clock. We're not allowed to do that anymore, which is a good thing. But I'd be so tired, and you almost got a bit zingy when you were that tired. But I'd have my band practice, and I'd think, wow, I really don't feel like going. But I would make myself go, and invariably, I felt well afterwards. Because what I tell everybody, the music is my mindfulness. They say, well, that's not mindfulness. I say, well, it is, because what it does is it stops me thinking about the stresses of everything else, and to be able to think about something and focus on it is a type of mindfulness, to change your thinking. And it makes you feel good. And so because I love my accordion and I'm passionate about it, it was really great. So I have this wonderful quote: sometimes music's the only thing that gets your mind off everything else. And I'm sure some of you can identify with that. Now, as adults, the other thing I encourage you to think about is consider being involved in choirs. We've even started choirs in hospitals. So there's actually one at the Moncton Hospital. My friend Lisa Searle got that going because she has an interest in the humanities as well. And it's a wonderful way to foster synchrony and bonding between health professionals and to get them thinking about that. As I've said multiple times, it can reduce our cortisol levels, promote bonding. If you've sung with someone, sung in harmony, it's pretty hard to get mad at them. And because there's something happens when you've done that together. And it can enhance morale as well. There's been research that shows that. And if you're getting older, it can actually reduce depression and make people feel less lonely. And there was one other huge study. It was almost 1,800 people in choirs. And overwhelmingly, it was positive data. And they identified things like the social connection and how important it was for them. Physically, they felt better. They felt cognitively stimulated because they had to pay attention, read the music, get the words, get them out, get the timing, all of those things, because you're activating all these different parts of the brain. They talked about their mental health and just generally feeling better, and their sheer enjoyment. They even use words like transcendence, which can definitely happen depending on what you do with the different types of music. Now, the other piece that I think is really interesting is how do we use it for health and healing as we get older? And I'm particularly interested in this piece because I play my accordion in nursing homes, and I've seen this firsthand, and I'll share one example of that. But what's amazing, and if you think back to the things I've shared with you, in your teens and 20s, you're very much driven by those reward systems in our brain. And we're often very connected to the music of that time in our lives. And so when you, I have to tell you, I'm definitely, you can dance, you can jive. I'm all in for this because I've experienced it, and that music is so burned into me. I used to sit and listen to all those songs and dance around the living room, drive my parents crazy. And so those memories are very powerful. And so when you play music for people with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, you can actually help them find pieces of themselves. And there's a part of the brain, and I've highlighted it in the little green triangles there, that is called the medial prefrontal cortex. And that part is spared until very late in Alzheimer's disease, and it's involved in us remembering music and responding to music. So that's pretty cool. And I will share a story with you because this spoke volumes to me. It's happened to me a number of times, but this was probably the most profound. At one of the nursing homes that I go to, they would bring everybody out. Some of them couldn't walk. They would be in wheelchairs. So they'd be wheeled out, and they'd all be lined up in front of me. And there was one lady who literally sat, and she almost looked moribund because she was just kind of head down, really not responding. And the staff told me that she hadn't spoken for the whole 4 months that she'd been there. So I started playing, and I usually try to play music, older music that they would be familiar with. And after about 10 minutes, I saw her foot start to go. And then I saw her start to tap her hand on the thing. The next thing, she lifted her head and she started to sing. And when I was finished, she called me over and she said, "Thank you, that was great." And the staff couldn't believe it because this person had not spoken. And that's the power of music. And if you go on YouTube, you will find countless examples of people just waking up and coming alive and starting to sing words. I have another lovely story of a lady that I know, her dad, he had become nonverbal and unresponsive really with Parkinson's disease. And one day I was there, he just started singing. Now he couldn't sing the words, but she was crying because he had just been unresponsive. And you can be by someone's bed and play music and you'll get a response. So it's incredibly powerful. Now, another neurologic disorder that's incredibly powerful when it comes to music is stroke. Now, stroke can be caused by different things. It can be a block of a blood vessel, but it can also be a hemorrhage, so a blood vessel bursts. And if most people have a blockage, that's the most common type of stroke. But of course, depending on where it is, it can affect one whole side of your body, perhaps one arm, one leg, whatever it might be. But if you use music, you can actually help people improve their walking, the cadence of their stride, because it might be asymmetric, so you try to improve that. The stride length, all of that can be improved with music. And the other thing that can be hard is most of us are left hemisphere dominant for language. So even though I'm left-handed, the chances are I'm still left hemisphere dominant for language. And so if you have a stroke involving your left hemisphere, it can be hard then to talk. But you can use music to access the right side of your brain and to start to learn to get the words out. And they often use rhythm to help them get the words out as well. So it can be a very powerful way to give people a chance to communicate again, and so they can regain some of their ability to speak. Now, the other disorder that I think music is incredibly powerful for is Parkinson's disease. So this is a disorder that actually affects, you lose special cells in an area called the substantia nigra in the brain, and you lose the ability to move in the same way. So it can be hard to initiate movement. When you do walk, the steps are smaller, almost like a shuffling gait. People get a tremor when they're resting. And then they also lose their ability to project their voice, so it becomes quieter. And I'm hoping this will play, but I wanted to show you that I gave you the example of what it was like to entrain to the beat when we did that exercise. They can use that to help someone walk more freely with Parkinson's disease. And so I want to see if we'll see if it will behave itself for me to.
To kind of post a video letting everybody know about this.
I'm not going to play the whole thing. I just want to show you. So I'll just let him walk a little there. And you see how hard it is for him to walk with the walker. His steps are small, and it's very challenging to keep moving with any regular movement. And I'm just going to move it along to when he's actually moving with music. And he's able to turn. Now, normally a person who has Parkinson's is very difficult to kind of walk along and pivot and just walk back like that. They actually have to do what's called an on-block movement. So they'll get to this point and they'll have to take multiple steps to be able to turn around easily. And so to be able to take music and to help someone move freely, what an incredible gift. And that's not medicine, but I believe it is medicine, but different kind of medicine. But it's very powerful. Now, the other thing I mentioned is voice. And there was a wonderful group in the States. I don't know if they're still running. They're called the Tremble Clefs, which I thought was great. So these are all patients with Parkinson's disease. And the idea is that they learn to project their voice again and be able to sing. And I'm just going to let you hear this, a little bit of this. They're just singing out, and they wouldn't have been able to do that. If you heard them talk, their voice would have been very quiet, but they learned to project their voice through singing, which is wonderful. Now, as I mentioned, I'm totally biased, and I understand that. You know, the accordion I see as the quintessential whole brain instrument, and I've often been teased that I chose to play accordion, and when I was young, it was very much a man's instrument. I was the only girl at my accordion school of music. So that wasn't always easy, but people tease people playing bagpipes, but here's one for the accordion. Welcome to heaven, here's your harp. Welcome to hell, here's your accordion. I hope you don't feel that after hearing the accordion. But as I say, when you think about the accordion, and I'll just give that as a good example, it truly is a full brain workout. And I'll just show you why I say that. So you've got the link between both halves of the brain called the corpus callosum, and that allows both brains to work in synchrony. And then that bit I've highlighted in that red part of the brain, that's our primary motor cortex, that's being activated. I'm listening, feeling, doing things, so you've got your primary sensory cortex. I'm listening, which is where the information comes in here for speech and music as well. I'm reading the music, so I'm moving my eyes to read the music. And then there's remembering what you're going to play next. You're reading the music with your visual cortex as well. You've got your coordination, which is the back part of your brain called your cerebellum. So all of these areas, if I was to scan myself playing my accordion, light up. What's really amazing is if I went into a scanner and I imagined myself playing all the pieces, it actually lights up the brain in the same way, which I think is pretty neat. So as we're coming towards the end of this, I really want to hopefully help you believe that music creates a space that maybe you can't find with other things, and it truly is a universal language. An incredibly powerful memory cue, as we illustrated with the movies that we did, and it can be very meaningful for people. It can recall special events in a way that something else may not be able to do that. When it comes to health, you know, it can create that sense of social connection, and people don't feel so lonely, and it can actually reduce stress, and also that sense of bonding as well because of the oxytocin that gets released. And it's very much intertwined with all of our rituals and traditions, and particularly all of the people in the oldest societies in our world. So I really think music truly is the soundtrack of our lives. I really believe that we are wired for music. There's been so much research that's been done, and the way our brains work, that it truly does seem that this is an intrinsic part of what it means to be human. And so it has this powerful impact on how we feel, how we want to move, our emotions, everything. And the development for children is so important. And I actually, I don't call it this when I tell families, but I actually prescribe music to people. So we call it social prescribing. And I will get kids involved in music, particularly if I'm concerned about their attention and things like that, because it can be so helpful. Mental health for youth. It's such a big concern. I really think music could play a huge role in helping with that. And then just general well-being and health for all of us. Music can be a wonderful gift for that. And then, of course, I've told you some, but there's more research that's been done around neurologic disorders. And so very powerful role it can play in helping people be able to move on with their life and do things. And then it affects all of our emotions, and it helps us remember things. So I really hope with this presentation that I've convinced you that music truly is the best medicine, and that I've converted you. So I want to say thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll all stay for the Ceilidh.
We have about 7 minutes for questions before the party starts. The floor is open to all, but we'll give precedence to students. Questions for Dr. Stewart?
Oh, because there are people online. So this is a really interesting question. A lot of people tell me they listen to music. You have to be careful, because much as we like to think we can do more than one thing at once, that's not actually how our brain works. So we actually have to shift attention between things if we're doing more than one thing at a time. I'm not saying it couldn't help, because for some people it would depend on the type of music. So, but if it constantly draws your attention away from what else you're trying to do, then it probably isn't a good thing. But it can be used to help you remember things. So I'll give you a fun thing I did with some of the medical students. So I had to teach them about one of the pathways, and they were just having trouble remembering how it went. So I taught them a little ditty to help them remember it. So this would be another way to use it. So it went like this: sunshine falling on the skin forms cholecalciferol, then it goes to kidney to become calcidiol, to liver to become calcidiol, then it goes to kidney to become calcitriol, cholecalciferol, calcidiol, calcitriol, diddle-diddle-diddle. So I had all the students singing this, and they told me in their exam they sat and sang it in their head to remember. So there's actually quite a lot of fun little ditties like that to help people remember things, because they become like little earworms in your mind. So it's just being careful about not allowing it to be a distraction to you. So that's the thing. Yeah.
We have someone at the back and they will come.
Who? Raise your hand. Hi. Who is it?
It's just behind the column.
Oh, that's why I can't see. Okay.
Hi. I'm just wondering if there have been any studies done, and I'm sure there have, about the impact of surgeons who often play music in the ORs and how that impacts their concentration, let's say.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about that is people play different types of music depending on the person. And they do find, like, some people like country music, some people like rock music. Maybe some of the other people there are not so happy about that. But yeah, so I don't know that it's been studied overall, but I know there's some data that shows if it's something they connect with, then it can help them be in a groove, so to speak. and I think that's true for all of us. If you, like even to get up or even to do your vacuuming, do you know what I mean? Like if you had music on that just makes you feel good and you were thing, you can imagine just going along and you're doing your activities and it can actually get you going. And there's actually a whole book on how you can use music to motivate you in different parts of the day. And so absolutely, I think that's very true for many of us. Yeah. There was somebody else. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I saw a performance last night by a classical musician. She was doing Great Women Composers, and it was a lovely thing. And she talked about Clara Schumann as the performer who introduced the kind of standard for concert recitals of playing from memory.
Right.
And which has always just freaking amazed me in concert pianists. And she said, I don't do that because I want my life to be a happy life. So the question is about the kind of the standards of memory and performance that enter into music. It seems to be the part of music that actually can make people quite miserable, that they've been expected to perform to such a high level.
No, so I had an interesting discussion about something related to this when I was at this conference, that if it becomes a chore to actually learn something and do it, then of course it's not going to make you feel good. And that's what you're alluding to. And it interestingly is true for, I used to play in classical accordion competitions when I was a teenager. And when you got to a certain level, you had to do it all from memory. Now that was all, humans had decided that, right, to do that. And in a sense, I don't really know what the purpose is, because whether you can play from memory or not shouldn't really matter. It's whether you're playing the piece with the feeling and emotion and capturing what it was all about. So no, I agree that if you're not enjoying the process, then it's not going to give you the joy. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Our next music event is going to be on January 6th, where with the Open Music Festival, we will have Metropolis with live musicians. So silent movie with live music, you're all invited. But right now, you're all invited to live music in the wardroom, where you now know you need this. You need to go make connections and talk to all your neighbors. So here on the left, hiding in the corner, is Gordon McHewitt, who actually has organized the music. Thank you so much, Gordon, and follow the man to the wardroom.
Thank you.
And before you leave, please join me thanking Dr. Stewart again.
Thank you. Thank you.